this week, Scotland's Louise takes on the world's best at Monte Carlo. How can we help reduce the number of children killed on our roads? And the cars of the 90s on show at Geneva. Hello and welcome to this new series of Top Gear. We're at Duns in the Scottish border country, a small and quiet market town, but one with a remarkable tradition in motorsport. It was the home, for example, of the man many people believe was Britain's greatest racing driver, Jim Clark, twice world champion. This room has been set up in his honour. It contains just some of the trophies he won during his short, but of course illustrious racing career, before he was sadly killed at Hockenheim in 1968, aged just 32. There's obviously something in the air or the water here, because it's also the home of Andrew Cowan, former rally driver, now a highly successful team manager, and one of Britain's most popular rising motorsport stars, Louise Aitken-Walker. Now, this year, Louise has been entered by Vauxhall in the World Rally Championship to compete for the entirely new Ladies' Championship. So it's a very big opportunity, really, for Louise. The first round was in January in the legendary Monte Carlo Rally, which few British rally drivers have entered in recent years, but it's still as difficult and important a rally as ever. Tony Mason went along to follow Louise's fortunes.
For Louise Aitken-Walker, the Monte Carlo Rally marked the start of a whole new era. Driving the sole Vauxhall Astra, it was her biggest challenge to date. After 10 years of rallying, mainly in Britain, the former shepherdess is now in the big time. She's the only British driver, male or female, with a full World Championship rally programme this year. But at this level, you don't just turn up at the start and set off. There's a lot of preparation and practice to be done.
Oh, the practice has been really hard. We've practiced the stages 6-7 times, which means a lot of stage miles, and you know, to go around all the stages is quite a long road section, and it's actually taken us a fortnight before Christmas. Then we came over on the 3rd after New Year, and we've been practicing right up until yesterday, so you know, it's been really hard work.
And for Louise, there was another innovation, a new Swedish co-driver to get to know, in the shape of Tina Turner.
She's a determined driver, and as a co-driver, the thing where you compare drivers, I think, is when they brake, you know, when they don't find their brake points. Then that makes you unsure as a co-driver. Louise haven't had any problems with it. I'm very confident that this is going to go good.
One of the unique features of the Monte is that it's the only world event with several starting points. Louise chose Reims in northern France, which meant an overnight drive south to the Principality of Monaco. After 24 hours driving and a night's rest, it was the start of the main part of the rally, with world champion Mickey Biasion heading the star-studded list of entrants. But even at this level, things can go wrong. Finnish ace Ari Vatanen began to wonder if his dash back from the Paris-Dakar desert race had been worth it. For Louise, it was the chance to meet her much-feared Italian rival in the Ladies' World Championship, Paola De Martini, and discuss the year's events. As the cars left Monte Carlo for 3 days to charge north into the French Alps, Louise had the bit between her teeth. She hurtled over the closed country roads, taking up to a minute a stage off Paola. Her luck was in, and it was her 30th birthday to boot. The team was working well.
Quick left into slack right.
There are several service points every day where there's not only fuel and water, but new tyres and a thorough checkup for the car. At the first major halt, who should be next to the Vauxhall camp than the dreaded Paola? She sent over her spies, but Louise wasn't revealing much.
Very slippy. Yeah. So as far as good? Yeah, it's okay.
Top Gear sent a spy of its own. How's it going? Good?
Not good.
No? No good?
No, the engine is finished.
Is it?
The engine is... no... not Giri.
the tires.
Louise was concentrating on tyres. Tyre choice is critical on the Monty, and there are tyre technicians to be dealt with at every turn.
Will we put cut rears on?
Yes. Yes.
And it will work,
Yes.
okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
I think it will be better for this one only.
Okay.
Yeah?
To try.
To try and see.
We have the S0R Adirize.
So how are you going? Big problems with tyre choice?
No, it's just the lingo over here. No, the tyres are okay. That last stage was really slippy and, sliding about a bit, so we need the tyres to warm up a lot quicker.
And one of the ways of doing this is to wiggle the car from side to side, traffic permitting, of course. The weather was already on Louise's side. When the four-wheel drive Lancia Delta of Didier Auriol stormed into the lead, the unusual absence of snow meant that the two-wheel drive Astra wasn't far behind. It was starting to nudge onto the leaderboard in spite of the threatening drops that lurked menacingly round every blind bend. 350 miles from Monte Carlo, it looked as though the spring-like conditions might be the deciding factor.
Well, this is a Monte Carlo rally with a difference. In fact, it's really quite warm here at Aubenas in the French Alps. Now, when Louise started this rally, she said she'd be happy to be in 15th position at the finish. But here, at the end of the first night, she's in 13th place, she's leading her class, and she's the leading lady. Not a bad birthday present.
The Monte Carlo Rally is one of France's greatest sporting events. By the second day, it was clear from the interest and newspaper coverage that the crowds were warming to the lady from Scotland. The Astra was clocking speeds of over 115 miles an hour as the fast open roads allowed Louise to use the racing skills she'd acquired in last season's British Saloon Car Championship. She was pulling well clear of Paola, who now had both engine problems and a virus. Car and driver were sounding distinctly rough and would retire soon. But it wasn't all plain sailing for Louise and the Vauxhall team. There'd been two problems with the gearbox, a broken oil seal and a damaged cluster, the collection of cogs that select the 6 main ratios. Louise didn't seem at all flustered by it.
We had the first and second gear that started to stick and we couldn't get out of second gear. But, the mechanics did a fantastic job when we got to the end of the stage. They changed the cluster in 8 minutes, so that's absolutely amazing.
Did that drop you a bit of time then on the stage?
Only about half a minute, that was all.
As the rally reached higher ground, it looked as though ice might be a serious problem for the first time.
Stage 11, I'm not looking forward to it at all because there's seemingly a lot of ice in it and it's going to be really slippy. I'll be glad when I see the end of this one.
To help the drivers with ice in the mountains, the top teams employ ice note crews, another unique aspect of the Monte Carlo. Driving standard road cars, they go over the stages before the roads are closed. Vauxhall employed none other than British champion David Llewellyn with Mike Nicholson. The places where ice occurs are recorded on the pace notes of the route the drivers have ridden in practice. Exact locations are then discussed with Louise and Tina.
On the hairpin right at there, that junction, you have an ice patch, and it's on the braking as well, so be a little careful as you come into it.
Right, okay.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
But although by the start of the third day there was snow on the top of the mountains, there was still none on the road, and this was proving to be the fastest Monte Carlo for many a year. Louise was loving it, and amazingly brought the Astra into the top 10 ahead of many more powerful cars. To get points towards the Ladies' World Championship, she had to finish in the top 20. It was vital she kept up a fast pace, but not too fast.
Oh, Gina.
Driving at these speeds, it's a fine line between success and failure, as Michael Eriksson found out. And not once, but twice. Luckily, no one was badly hurt in either incident. But driving in these World Championship events isn't just about driving on the limit all the time. Strategy and tactics come to the fore. Despite her high position, Louise claimed to be driving at only 8/10 of her ability. Trying to keep up with local man Delacour in his Peugeot for a class win could have blown her chances for the Ladies' Cup. And the remaining serious ladies' threat, Pascal Narey, was well down the field.
We're changing our tactics a little bit all the time. The other girl's 18 minutes down, really we're pulling away. So now all my intention is to keep her in the top 20, so I've got to keep my eye on the 20th place, which we're 3 minutes 18 up. And I really want 5 minutes there before the last night, because if it freezes, if we do get some snow flurries, then we're in problems.
Team tactics are a big part of World Championship rallying. The amount of effort put into a rally team is mind-boggling to say the least. With helicopters and service cars fluttering around like old mother hens, it's big, big business. Although it looks more at home in an airing cupboard, this is a set of tyre warmers from Formula One. But with a season costing millions, team managers buy all the technology they can lay their hands on.
There's a lot more pressure than there used to be. You know, I thought when I first got involved in driving that the team manager just wandered around and ate in the best restaurants, but I'm afraid that's all changed. To be competitive, you've got to have everything, and you've got to think of every eventuality. I mean, for example, on this event to run 2 cars, we had 70 people. You know, we had 17 service vans, including the service trucks and things like that. This obviously costs a lot of money. We had an aircraft flying during the rally at all times, controlling the ice note crews, controlling the service crews, and without this sort of cover, I mean, you wouldn't be competitive. I'm very, very happy for Louise, the way she's coped with it, competing in Monte Carlo, absolutely at the top level, and doing so well is just brilliant.
After 3 days of rallying, there was a day's rest back in Monte Carlo, and then it was up into the mountains again for the final 10 crowd-lined stages. This is where the rally is usually decided, and this year was no exception, with Didier Auriol in the Lancia narrowly beating Carlos Sainz in the Toyota. The pressure was clearly on in the Vauxhall, and Louise actually went off the road during the final stages. She'd never worked so hard in her life and had even been out practicing the previous night when most of the other drivers were asleep. In the end, it all paid off. Louise stormed through, dropping only 1 place in spite of the mishap, to finish a magnificent 11th place overall with 20 points towards her World Ladies Championship. And of course, she also won the prestigious Coupe des Dames on this event, joining illustrious names like Sheila Van Dam and Pat Moss.
Great, what about that then?
Well, what about that? That was hard work.
Harder than you expected?
No, well, it was very tough at night, you know. The last 10 stages were really quite tough, but, you know, it's all been worthwhile, and the car's been absolutely fantastic. And
So the plan of campaign for the year looks to be on target?
well, I hope so. If we can have another 6 of these, should be good.
And so, all that was left was a gentle toddle up to the cobbled courtyard of Monaco's fairy tale palace and a meeting with Prince Rainier to collect the silverware. For the farmer's daughter from the Scottish borders, it had been a long, hard road, but Louise Aitken-Walker had shown that she was among the very best rally drivers in the world.
Well, after that triumph, things didn't go quite so well for Louise in the second round of the World Championship in Portugal. In fact, she had a horrific accident, with the car plunging and somersaulting down a cliff face before diving into a lake and becoming submerged. She and her co-driver Tina were very lucky indeed to escape with their lives. You'll be glad to hear she's now fully recovered, relaxing at her home here in Duns and really looking forward to the Rally of Corsica in May. Now let's turn to accidents that really affect us all. We still have in this country over 5,000 people who are killed each year on the roads, and several 100,000 who are injured. And those figures contain one particularly disturbing category, the number of child pedestrians who are killed or seriously injured. In 1988, for example, 267 children were killed, over 23,000 were injured. That's 2 or 3 times worse than countries like France or Germany, which in other respects have a far worse safety record than our own. This is the heart of the problem. Discreetly filmed, these children show a total disregard for their own safety. A A study in Hampshire showed that 50% of children did not stop at the curb prior to being involved in an accident. 80% were running across the road when they were hit. But all these children should have been taught road safety. So the question remains, why are there still so many accidents? Usually it's a parent or guardian who introduces the child to road safety, perhaps encouraging them to join groups like the Tufty Club, 23,000 of which are spread across the country. But most of the instruction is left to the schools, and ironically, this may be one of the problems.
Right, what I'd like some people to do is to come and put some traffic
A
on
road
there.
safety officer visiting a school, a scene repeated across the country.
Let's put that car on. All you have to do is just touch it onto the board and it sticks.
Here in Surrey, they try and contact the school 3 times a year and visit at least once. For this class of 8-year-olds, the talk lasts 40 minutes. But it's very much a classroom situation.
Right, here's the room. So you have to stick off the end a little bit. What can you see that's not safe? What can we do to put it right? Come and tell me. Yes, tell me.
That bike should be closer to the edge.
The bike should be closer to the edge of the road? Why do you say that? Why do you think it should be?
Surprisingly, the subject is not part of the national curriculum. A senior pupil gets no more than 6 hours road safety tuition in total. And Reading University found that 86% of secondary schools did not have a road safety policy.
Most of the methods used at the moment are rather passive ones. Children are told how to behave in the road. They don't really learn by doing. They don't learn by actually performing road crossing tasks in some kind of safe manner. We're concerned with 2 very basic skills that the code doesn't teach. Firstly, it doesn't teach them how to find safe places to cross the road, a much more difficult problem than you might at first think. And secondly, it doesn't systematically teach them how to make the timing judgments that you need to make in deciding whether you've time to get across the road or not.
Faut tenir une distance. Ah ben, ça vient pas du vélo, ça vient de la bonne femme.
But it's France where much of this theory has been put into practice since 1954. They have more cars per head of population than Britain, but a lower child accident rate. Children attend one of 1,000 special practice sites owned by local government, introducing them to road skills. 2.5 million children passed through the scheme last year, revisiting it regularly over the following 2 to 3 years. Unlike Britain, the subject is part of the curriculum. By the age of 14, they will have been taught the principles of the highway code, rules of traffic, responsible behaviour for pedestrians and cyclists, and preparation for future driving. All this is taught in an integrated curriculum. Biology, for example, being combined with a talk on the dangers of drink driving. At 14, the children must take a test for the safety diploma. But clearly education, even a revised safety code in this country, isn't by itself sufficient. Another vital factor has to be what's called street engineering. That embraces everything from the way street crossings are designed and laid out to giving extra protection to residential areas like this against through traffic flows. Because studies show that most children are knocked down very close to their homes. 4 out of 5 within half a mile, as many as 1 in 3 within 100 yards of their front door. This estate is typical of many in the London borough of Ealing, and had a particularly bad child accident rate. In a 5-year period, 63 children under the age of 12 have been involved in road accidents. So in 1980, they introduced these pavement bulges, 21 of them spread throughout the estate. They stick out 3.5 metres into the road. So for the driver, the road is no longer straight. He has to negotiate the artificial curves, and that means that cars really have to slow down. To help pedestrians, the bulges have also been placed close to pedestrian routes, and now drivers can clearly see people. Because prior to the installation, 69% of pedestrian accidents had involved masking by parked cars. White markings restrict parking close to the bulges, and one has to say that has upset some residents. Now, since the introduction of this very simple and very cheap bit of street engineering, pedestrian accidents here have been cut by half, so they work. They've saved an enormous amount of family anguish and heartache in the area. Clearly, the council has made no attempt to make them look attractive. They simply whack them in at lowest cost. But a similar scheme in Holland, which has had a very active accident prevention programme focused on children since 1970, shows they can look very attractive indeed. Pedestrians have priority over the whole street. Drivers mustn't travel faster than 10 to 20 kilometres an hour, and street furniture and parking arrangements make that self-enforcing. Injury accidents are few, but the cost of the scheme is high. In 1980, this scheme cost £20,000 a street. Now, the second most dangerous area for children, as you might expect, is within 500 yards of their school, particularly at coming out times between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the afternoons. Now, here in Folkestone, they had a particular problem with 4 schools stretched out along the same piece of road. The solution they've adopted could well become a model for many other parts of the country. At one end of Park Farm Road, a residential area. At the other, a heavy industrial estate. In a half-mile stretch in between, 1,000 children moving twice, sometimes 3 times a day. This video shows the difficulties children had crossing the road. 3 children a year were being injured. For it to be stopped, the speed and volume of traffic had to be reduced. By putting in 3 ramp narrows, as they're called, slightly raised and placed 500 yards apart, vehicle speed was drastically reduced. Prior to the installation, 78% of vehicles exceeded the 30-mile-an-hour limit. Now only 18% do. And it's good to hear that the Transport Minister is considering cutting the speed limit in some residential areas to 20 miles an hour. Slower speeds have certainly worked here in Folkestone.
They've now been in for over 6 months and we haven't had a single reported accident. Each of those injury accidents used to cost the community £22,000, apart from the pain, grief and suffering to the individuals concerned. This sort of thing is common on the continent. We've been to Denmark, we've been to Holland, we've got to deal with traffic problems as Europeans in the European way.
Well, those simple and relatively inexpensive road engineering schemes in Ealing and Folkestone certainly seem to have achieved a real improvement in road safety for children in the area. Surely it's time that schemes like them were adopted more widely around the country as a very cost-effective way of reducing the tragedy caused to families when their children are knocked down on the roads. Right, now for a complete change of scene, so to speak, to new cars and the first major motor show of the 90s, the 60th Geneva Motor Show. How are manufacturers facing up to the challenges of all kinds facing them in the marketplace? We sent Chris Goffey and Sue Baker to find out.
While the concept cars from America and Japan generally showed continuing enthusiasm for more gloss and power, Europe's offerings were more concerned for the environment, like this alternative fuel Audi. There weren't many European cars launched either. The new Alfa Spider looked rather familiar.
The most significant new car launched at Geneva is the Fiat Tempra, the replacement for the old Regatta. Now, you might be tempted to think that this looks pretty much like a Tipo with a boot. You wouldn't be far wrong, because it has the same floor pan and similar mechanical layout. But they say that the only parts that you can see, which the 2 cars share in common, are the 4 doors and the windscreen. Now, when the range goes on sale in July, it'll be priced from around £8,000 to about £12,500. So it'll be competitively priced against cars like the Cavalier and the Sierra. Now, Fiat claim that this one has the smallest exterior dimensions in its class, but the biggest interior. And it does have a generous boot, 18 cubic feet.
With its emphasis on show cars and styling exercises, Geneva has always been an important indicator of the sort of cars we're going to be driving in a few years' time. Well, here on the Ford stand, there's tremendous corporate enthusiasm for Zig, which looks more like a racing motorbike on 4 wheels, and Zag, a multi-purpose recreational vehicle designed by the Gear Studios in Turin. Why the enthusiasm? Well, it's very difficult to make money on small cars. They cost just as much to make as big cars. But although these vehicles look totally different, they share the same modular construction, the same power, transmission, floor pan, doors, and wheel arches and sills. If you can make such completely different vehicles from the same components, you stand a very good chance of making a lot more money. Look out for them on our roads within the next 5 years.
Many of the world's most beautiful car shapes have come from the Ital design studios of Giorgetto Giugiaro in Turin. Well, this latest creation is no exception. He's called it the Kensington. It's based, as you may well recognise, on the Jaguar XJ Saloon, and it uses the V12 double-six engine from the current Sovereign. Now, what Giugiaro did was to move the twin fuel tanks from the standard Jaguar into a single tank behind the rear seats. Now that enabled him to shorten the tail and taper down the roofline. He also made the front end look rather more aggressive and purposeful with a narrower grille, and the overall effect, I think you'll agree, is a very striking looking car indeed. It's been creating a great deal of interest here, not least from some of the most senior people at Jaguar.
The Japanese have 30% of the Swiss market, so you'd expect them to be pretty prominent here at Geneva. This is the new Honda NSX sports car, a 160-mile-an-hour machine that draws heavily on Honda's experience of Formula One. But they can't use composite materials in mass production, so for the shell of the car they've gone to aluminium, not just for the exterior panels, but for the monocoque chassis, the seat frames, the suspension. Everything is either cast or pressed aluminium. Honda claim that saves 40% over a steel shell. It also makes for a very stiff, long-lasting and rust-free motorcar. The sheer pace of Japanese development was evident on the Mitsubishi stand. The concept car was first shown at Tokyo only 5 months ago, and it was joined at Geneva by the production version. The 160-mile-an-hour two-seater supercar should be in the showrooms within 2 years.
This is going on sale next month, and you might not instantly recognise it as such, but it's Toyota's new MR2 sports car. Still a two-seater, mid-engined, but a rather different shape from the old one, much more rounded and muscular looking. This version has the Celica GTI 16-valve engine and a top speed of 137 miles an hour. It's likely to cost around £16,500 when it goes on sale in April.
Land Rover chose Geneva for the Swiss launch of Discovery. Four-wheel drive accounts for 1 in 6 cars sold in Switzerland, so it's an important market. They're hoping to build on the success already achieved here with the Range Rover, believe it or not, the best-selling luxury car in Switzerland. Rover Cars are introducing their 216 at last with catalyst. There seems more than a hint of annoyance here that Honda, who supply the engine, have kept them waiting so long for it. But if you want to sell cars in Switzerland, they've got to be clean. They're the most environmentally conscious market in Europe. The Peugeot Citroën Group were introducing their new cleaner turbo diesel engines. Used in both the Peugeot 605, on sale here in the autumn, and Citroën XM, they exceed current and proposed diesel emission standards. GM was showing its Impact electric car, which claims a range of 120 miles and 75 miles an hour, but not at the same time. And Volkswagen was showing an ingenious diesel-electric hybrid Golf with an electric motor generator unit instead of a flywheel. We'll be dealing with alternative ways of powering cars in a 2-part feature starting next week.
No motor show is complete without something new and uncompromisingly exotic. Now, I know this looks a bit like the world's fastest banana, but it is in fact the new Lamborghini Diablo, a seriously fast car. 200 miles an hour top speed, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. And that's with a V12 5.7-litre engine. It's a modified version of the engine that used to power the old Countach, which this car replaces. Lots of the cars around this show are bristling with electronics, but not this one. They say they don't want to dull the sensitivity of the driver. But there's nothing very sensitive about the price. That's £150,000. Oh, for a fat Swiss bank account.
Well, another thing you need a fat Swiss bank account for, or perhaps sell the family silver, is rallying. As we said, the cost could run into millions. So for the 3rd year running, we're making Top Gear viewers a bargain offer. A chance to drive in this year's Lombard RAC Rally absolutely free. The last 2 winners have been Jim Smith from Dundee, who won in 1988, and who's driving in Group N this season, and Liz Jeffries from Brackley, who won last year. She struggled on gamely to finish this gruelling event, albeit in last place. The details of the competition are on page 80 of the Radio Times Now on sale. What you have to do is answer a few simple questions and send off an application form. But the important point is that application forms have to be back by Thursday, the 10th of April, so if you're keen to enter, get going. That's all this week from Jim Clark's Trophy Room. He had, of course, a very successful career with Lotus. Next week we're at Lotus. We road test the Elan. We also look at some of the latest research to develop new and environmentally better ways of powering our motor cars in the future. So see you then. Until then, drive safely. Goodbye.